So I literally just woke up to this very odd idea that I just had for some reason. And I also was going through comics or comments on my Ichika video, and a lot of the comments that pop up are, "Oh, I really wish we can continue the story of Tokyo Ghoul with Ichika." And looking back at it now, it's kind of interesting that a lot of people say that because yes, I understand where some people are coming from the aspect of yes, a Tokyo Ghoul continuation would be very interesting, especially looking at the life of how Tokyo currently is with ghouls and stuff after, after or during the events or even after the 6 year time skip. But Ichika wouldn't work as a main character, and I guess this video would just be me explaining why she wouldn't work. I can't expect this video to be very long because, like I've said before, Ichika, or like obviously if you read the final chapter of the manga, Ichika's like 5, and she doesn't really have a whole lot when it comes to personality. She sort of kind of acts like any other 5-year-old would. She's just very playful. So I guess depending on the way how she grows up, it could change the outcome of it. But the main reason why I'm saying that Ichika probably wouldn't work as a main character, whether it took place during the final chapter of Tokyo Ghoul, or like a decade or a decade and a half in the future, is simply due to the fact that even though Ichika, from a combatant standpoint, does have a whole lot of potential, especially if you look at her lineage, the people that she's related to, all of them are very powerful. I mean, you have Toka, Kaneki, Yomo, Ayato, Arata, Hikari. Like, there's so many different ghouls that she's related to that are very, very strong. They're at least of the S tier or above. Not to mention she's the child of the One-Eyed King. So theoretically, from a combative standpoint, Ichika does have the potential to become one of the strongest ghouls in history. Not to mention she's also a natural one-eyed ghoul, just like Eto. Though realistically, her either being more ghoul or more being less ghoul is kind of up for debate. But either way, she is classified as a one-eyed ghoul because she only does have one Kakugan, and we see this in the final chapter of the manga. I believe in the first page, I think. Like, you know how if you open up the volumes and you see, like, the introduction page, I think she has her Kakugan activated there, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, I digress. I feel like because of the era that they live in, even though there are some threats lurking about that we either didn't get too much identification to, like, for example, that apparently that one person that ended up dying in the final chapter, I think they were, like, a school teacher or something, I don't really remember, but we don't even really know what's going on there. And then you have the whole entire stuff with Shikore going on. I feel like if there was a Tokyo Ghoul continuation story, whether it was like a few chapters long or like a light novel or even a full-blown other manga, Ichika wouldn't be interesting enough as a character for it to be centered around. Because realistically, if you look at the way how their life is kind of built up until this point with everything that's going on, they kind of live in an era of peace, and obviously peace isn't really something that lasts forever, we all know this, but based off of the way how it was presented to be, and the fact that Kaneki apparently is going around to other countries and talking about how ghoul and human relations should exist, and you even look at the way how they kind of talk about every single ghoul, or every single person in the final chapter, like Suzuya, they say like, oh yeah, he became one of the best investigators ever to live. Whether or not he ended up surpassing Arima, that's up for debate. He could have, possibly, when he's like in his 30s or even 40s, since he would live a lot longer than Arima would have. And even looking at other people like Hide, for example, them saying something on the lines of like, oh yeah, him and Kaneki remain friends for the rest of their lives. Like, obviously, it seems like for however long they ended up living, which realistically, like, humans die, and like I think the average human lifespan is supposed to go up to like 80. That's like the average. Obviously, people can live a lot longer. For example, my family, a lot of people live up to 90s, late 90s, to even, I have this one great uncle that lived up to be 106. Like, obviously, people's lifespans vary, but like, if we're going by that, that means that there's at least more than half a decade of people living for like a really long time in this era of peace. So that means that during the entire span of when we see Ichika, growing up, she wouldn't really have to deal with much conflict. I would say the most conflict she would ever have to deal with is if she ever ended up going into the TSC, like how we've seen other characters go and assist them, like Kaneki or Tsukiyama, or I don't think Nishiki. I think Nishiki isn't helping them from a combative standpoint. I think he's just kind of being like a scientist or a doctor with Kimi, if I'm not mistaken. But like pretty much ghouls and humans that have kind of joined together to join the, to form the TSC and are fighting against other threats. That's kind of the most combat I feel like she would have to deal with, and even then, it doesn't seem like it's a whole lot because most of the ghouls, at least within Tokyo, are kind of working alongside humans or they're living alongside them. Like in the case of Kobin, where even though she isn't directly, being or working with humans, she is being somewhat influenced by them because, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she's liberating ghouls that feel like that they don't have a place anywhere else. And then Takizawa did whatever the hell. We don't even know what the hell he's doing. And then Kurona apparently went to the Middle East and just disappeared. Now, I do feel like realistically, if we did get a Tokyo Ghoul continuation, there's two continuations that I can see happening. One, I don't know who the main character would be in this scenario, but have anybody who would be interesting and potentially also has some type of connection to Kurona. The only person I can really think of off the top of my head that could work is someone like Amon, Suzuya, or Kaneki. Those are like the only three I can really see working. And I guess you can kind of say Takizawa as well, but Takizawa I don't really think would do that. Just because you kind of look at the way how he is, the situation that he's in the final chapter, and this dude is looking rather depressed. But you can have where they go to the Middle East and they investigate. We find out more about the Washu lineage because we know that they originally came from there. Perhaps we run into a lot more ghouls that are extremely, very, very powerful because since that is the origin point of where most ghouls came from, realistically, I feel like the strongest ghouls in the series should be in Saudi Arabia, or not in Arabia, but like in the Middle East. And we also do know that, Tokyo has like a really bad ghoul problem. So I feel like the ghoul problem might rise again in like the Middle East, and I feel like that'd be a really interesting plot for the series to take if they decide to do that. Another thing that I feel like that they could also do as a plot to continue the story is have the Quink Squad, like the main characters in this scenario would be like Uri and Yusa Arima. Have where those two end up going to deal with the Shikare threat, because the way how they're bringing up Shikare in the final chapter of Tokyo Ghoul, as like they say that he's like a really big threat, they kind of bring him up to be like a triple S rated ghoul, and I feel like the Quinks actually managing to accomplish like a big task in taking down Shikare would be a really cool thing to see, especially where you have where the TSC say that the Quinks have been like the most useful group when it comes to taking down like these dragon like the dragon orphans. So I think that would be a kind of interesting plot. But pretty much what I wanted to say was Ichika I don't really think would be that great as a protagonist because she lives in an era of peace. Realistically, if we're going off of the way how her mother and her father are, they probably wouldn't want her to grow up in a combative sense, more just like live a life like an ordinary child or an ordinary person. Just probably just go to school and stuff and just interact with people any way that people would expect a person to grow up. And I feel like the most combat she might ever get, which I kind of feel like I've joked about this in my Discord, but I kind of feel like when it comes to the parenting of Kaneki and Toka, I feel like Kaneki would be that parent that is worried about everything that would happen with their kid, like the really overprotective parent. And you have where Toka would kind of be like that parent that'd be like, oh, like they're fine, whatever, and would only kind of act a little bit overprotective if something happens to their kid. Like you see in the light novels with the way how Toka acts about Hinami, and you see the way how Kaneki acts about Hinami, are very, very different. Where Kaneki is a little bit more cool-headed if something big goes down, whereas Toka is kind of like, I'm going to rip you apart. So I feel like it would kind of end up being like that when it comes to the way how Ichika's raised. But another thing that I could actually see happening in regards to Ichika, which is seems to be like a theme when it comes to, I guess, the Kirishima. Well, I can't really call it like the Kirishima bloodline, because technically wouldn't it be like the Yomo bloodline? Because Yomo's last name is Yomo, right? Like, because based off of Uta's relationship with Yomo and Itori's relationship with Yomo, they call him Renji or Ren. So I feel like I'm pretty sure Renji is his first name and Yomo would be the last name. So I guess it would be the Yomo bloodline with like Hikari, Yomo, Ayato, and Toka. It seems like in their like teenage / young adult years, they're kind of like really rebellious. And then you have where once they become older, they seem to tame a lot more. So I guess it's possible that with Ichika, that something like that could happen. Now, with their bloodline, I feel like realistically that's mainly due to the way how their environment was, whereas the way how their environment was when they were growing up is very different compared to the way how Ichika's was growing up. But I still think it could. I still think it's possible that it could happen if it's like a quote unquote genetic type thing. So yeah, but either way, I don't really think Ichika would work that well as a protagonist. I think either keeping Kaneki as the protagonist or switching it to another character that's very interesting like Uri or Yusa would be a lot better. In particular, Yusa, I think, has a lot of potential, and I think a story with him in the Quink Squad going up against Shikore and finding a lot about that and the whole entire situation there would be really cool, as well as like another light novel or like side story that is focused on what exactly happened with Kurna in the Middle East and finding out a lot of those answers that we didn't really get in the main story of Tokyo Ghoul when it comes to the Washi bloodline. I also think would be very, very good. So those are kind of my pitches, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. This was just kind of a off-the-cuff video, but it was something that I just thought of like off the top of my head like really quick. So yeah, anyways, comment down below your thoughts. I'm curious what you have to say. Do you think Ichika could work as the main protagonist? If yes, comment down below why. If not, also comment down below why. And yeah, so anyways, thanks for watching. Remember to comment, subscribe as always, guys. Love you all. Jalen Hawk signing out. See you guys.